Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to Marquette University Law School in Eckstein Hall. I'm Mike Goucher, and this is On the Issues. This is our continuing series of conversations with news and policymakers, people who are doing interesting, important work in this region and beyond. Today, we are delighted to have with us a couple of folks who are going to talk about the new Cristo Rey Jesuit High School in Milwaukee. Seated to my left is Andrew Stith. Andrew is the president of Cristo Rey Jesuit High School here. And seated next to me is Maritza Contreras. Maritza is the Director of Administrative Management Services for the Hispanic Chamber of Wisconsin. She is a former Cristo Rey Chicago student, and we're going to be talking to her about the student experience. She's also a Marquette grad, we're proud to say. So won't you please welcome Maritza and Andrew to Marquette University Law School.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take about 45 minutes, and we're going to talk about Cristo Rey and how it came to be here and what it's doing and why it's different in some respects than some other schools. At times I'll be asking questions of Andrew. At times I'll be asking questions of Maritza. So we'll have a good conversation, and then we'll leave about 15 minutes for you to ask questions at the end of today's program. So Andrew, let me begin with you and talk about Cristo Rey. And there are now 30 Cristo Rey schools around the country, the most recent being in Dallas and Milwaukee. So tell us about the philosophy. What is behind Cristo Rey?
Sure. Well, it all started in 1996. The Jesuits went into Pilsen in Chicago and felt called to serve this neighborhood of primarily Hispanic, primarily low-income folks. And they went to the people and said, "What do you need?" And the people came back and said, "We need a good high school for our kids." And so the Jesuits said, well, let's do this. Let's get a high school going. We know education, we can do education. But the issue was that they didn't know how to pay for it. They knew they couldn't turn around and charge the typical private school tuition for Jesuit or private education to these families who couldn't pay it anyway. And so they went to the business community and asked, how can we make this educational model viable in the long term? And so the educational community came back and said, the business community came back and said, go out into the business world. They're right near the Loop in Chicago. Go out into the business world and find a job that your students can do, charge a wage for that job, have the wage come back to the school to help offset a large percentage of the cost of their education. Between the wage of the job and some fundraising and the nominal contribution by the families, you should be able to make it work. And so they did, and it worked. And around 2001, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and a venture capitalist from California, B.J. Casson, caught wind of this school. And they decided to put about $20 million together to replicate this school around the country, which you had alluded to, with 30 schools. And I feel like what they saw was yes, it made Catholic college prep education financially viable, but they also saw the real educational benefits that come with having students in the workplace, such as some of the simple communication skills that you or I might take for granted. They also were exposed to a business world, a community that was much broader than what they had experienced before. They might not have even gotten out of their neighborhoods prior to working at their Cristo Rey school. So students were really allowed to dream bigger dreams and explore what their own passions were. And then the biggest thing I think they saw, and this is one thing that we really seize on because it makes us distinct, is for our students, we focus on students from low-income households. For our students, yes, it is about education, but it's also about access. This is about justice. This is about affording these students an experience and an opportunity to meet people who they would have never met before. And so all of a sudden you had our students talking with these presidents of these companies, these high-level people who could help them, not only with the job that they have at that company, but also in the future. Write letters of recommendations, offer jobs down the road.
I'm going to talk to Maritza about that in just a moment, but one more question. When you talk about success, and clearly if you have 30 schools now, and you have one back in the mid-90s, you're trying to replicate success. But what does success look like in terms of the metrics, the measurables, ACT scores, graduation rates, kids going on to college? What does it look like?
Well, so for us, success is that 100% of our students are accepted to at least one college. That's when we talk to families, that's our pledge to families, that if a student is going to come to us and put in the hard work of coming to Cristo Rey and working for 4 years, that it's incumbent upon us to ensure that they're accepted to at least one college. I would say, beyond the metrics, success looks like a student who is beats our graduation values. So a student who's loving. Maritza, you could probably recite this, right? All Jesuit high schools seek to form people, not just people with test scores, although intellectual competence is a value, but loving people who are committed to justice, people who are work experienced, people who see the world as a place where they can make a difference and be men and women for others. And so that's success. The Cristo Rey Network is just because it's just becoming old enough to have 6-year college graduation statistics, is just now finding out that its graduates have persisted through college at more than double the rate of the average, the national rate for students in the similar demographic. And so, when you talk about hard and fast metrics, that's pretty exciting, and we only think it's going to improve from there.
So when we're talking about success, some people would probably say you look like success because you're doing well in your professional career. You did well here at Marquette, and you did very well. You were a scholarship award winner at Cristo Rey in Chicago. Tell us a little bit about your family and how you became connected to Cristo Rey.
Absolutely. So I actually lived down the street from Cristo Rey. So when I was growing up, it used to be a different middle school, and the construction started, and I started noticing that the neighbors were going to school dressed up, such as we are right now. And it was something that I've never seen before. Everyone was worried about getting the latest gym shoes or the latest T-shirt or the latest dress for your homecoming dance at the middle school. And all of a sudden, I started asking my neighbors, why are you so dressed up? What's going on? Where are you going? School. It was the weirdest thing I've ever heard. And so I went home. I remember we were playing kickball in the street. I must have been 8 or 9. Mm-hmm. So I went home and I told my mom, it's like, hey, I want to dress up and go to school like her. Her name was Alex at the time. And my mom, she was so confused. She was like, you're 9, what are you talking about? You haven't even graduated middle school. We'll look into that school. But some neighbor had told her, there are multiple schools that your daughter should apply to. Don't just stick to the first one. But 9 years old, I had a vision. I knew where I wanted to go to high school. And so, when I applied, it was funny because I was the oldest. I'm the oldest of 5, and I went to the interview, and they do this weird thing where they interview us all together, so my parents and myself, and then they separate us. And I'm like, oh man, they better get all the questions right. What's going on? So they would ask, what do you do? What are your chores? And I'm like, oh man, I don't know if my parents are gonna say the same thing. I was so worried. And so I remember, leaving the room, and I told my mom, it's like, I mop, I do dishes. And so she was just looking at me like, what is going on? So they had their interview, and weeks later we find out whether or not we're accepted, and we were accepted. I was so excited. And when orientation started, similar to what Andy said, it was a lot of, this is how you would shake someone's hand. But be firm. Don't present yourself with the weak handshake. Keep eye contact. Right, exactly. No dead fish. And so, I thought it was the coolest thing. I would go home and show my mom, like, hey, this is how you properly shake someone's hand. And it was a learning experience, not only for myself, but for my family and my neighbors, and because it's something that we had never seen before. And so my experience was very unique in the sense that we learned how to type and type fast. There was really cool games. And when it's a competition at 14 years old, everyone wants to be the best, right? So you start working really hard at your typing efficiency, your efficiency with Excel, with Word, and with all these other tools that would help you essentially succeed, and how to make sure you learn how to alphabetize files if that's what you're put in. So as a freshman, though, I was placed at this beautiful hospital. It's Mercy Hospital on a mother-baby floor. And it's the first time I've ever seen or ever been exposed to any sort of medical profession. And this particular profession, I used to type birth certificates. And so I thought I had the coolest job in the world, right? That's such a special part of the process. I would go in and talk to the parents and, try to figure out what they wanted to name their child. And I was there when my mom had my sibling. I was there when my cousin had her baby. And, I was the one that typed the birth certificate. So I thought it was the coolest thing. And But then I realized that, they started asking me, what do you want to do for college? College? I had never thought about college. I was a freshman. I was the first in my family. Cristo Rey was already a huge deal. Nonetheless, looking and trying to imagine what 4 years down the line would look like. And so it was amazing in the sense that they would take me under their wing. They would show me this is what a pediatrician does. This is what a social worker would do. And I would shadow all these medical professionals. And at the end of the day, I ultimately came to the conclusion that there was one profession that absolutely stole my heart, which was nursing. Just because of the patient interaction that they would have and, such a long-term impact that they had. And so hence why I pursued nursing at Marquette.
Mm-hmm. And you, kids talk at that age. You go back, you grew up in the Pilsen neighborhood. You go back to the neighborhood after a school day. Did you think your experience was different? Did the kids talk about what they did as opposed to what you did? Did you feel different at all?
Oh, it was very much different. So, there was different routes. There was South route, there was C bus, there was A bus, and, there was even like a little war against all these little buses, and not a mean war by any means. It was just like, haha, we got back to school, we get to go home before you, So it was a weird experience because my work days would end around 5:15 or so. I would get home around 5:30, 5:45, and lots of the times, especially the way it works is that you work one day out of the week, right? So you switch a full-time position with 4 other students. And so my job freshman year, for example, I was a Thursday worker. So I'd work every Thursday, and once a month, I would rotate the Mondays with the 4 other students in which I shared the position with. And so when I would get home on Mondays, it was like scram to student council. When I would get home on Thursday, scram to basketball practice. So it wasn't 5:30 and then the day completely ends. It was, you have your extracurricular activities, you have to go home, you have to do your homework. If there's a test the next day, you have to study just as every other student in any other high school in Chicago or across the nation for that matter. And so that was a little unique in the sense that, some of my friends that I went to middle school with, I went to the local public school, wanted to hang out after school, they would get out at 2:30. And so I couldn't. And
you didn't mind that?
I
Longer
didn't.
days?
I didn't mind that at all because it was only just one day out of the week and, once a month, 2 days. But every other day I would get out at 3:30 and, I had just as many, if not more opportunities than my friends at the public school because I had the opportunity to work. And that was a whole different identity. So school is one thing. It's awesome. You're with your peers at 14, 15, 16, 17, or 18. But then when you're in a professional world, they don't look at you like a child. They look at you as any other professional that's working really hard and it has this really unique opportunity. And, my supervisor at the time didn't really understand Cristo Rey, just as I didn't really understand the Cristo Rey internship program. And so, she wanted to make sure that she had a long-lasting impact on me and planted the seed of you have to go to college, you have to get a career, and you have to do good for yourself so you can get your family ahead because that's the key to your future.
There may be people in this room who don't really understand this workforce part of the equation at Cristo Rey. Explain for us, Andrew, what that looks like in reality. How many students are going to work? Maritza laid out some of that, but how does it work? How do we line up the jobs to match the students? Tell us about that.
Sure. Maritza did a pretty good job at introducing it. Every student, 100% of our students work at Cristo Rey. If you come to Cristo Rey, that's just what the expectation is. Again, we set it out from the very beginning. And so it's a part of every student's experience. And I like how you described that it's a unique identity from the academic identity. It gives students something else, whether they're doing well in math or not, it gives them something else that they can feel good about doing and do well, potentially. So four students share a full-time, 5-day-a-week job, and they each work approximately 7 to 8 hours a day. The school transports them to and from the workplace so that we make sure that they're on time, they're dressed right, and they're in the right space, as teenagers need to be sometimes.
We get checked, to Andy's point, we do get checked. When you go check in for work, they look at you up and down, and if you're not wearing your tie appropriately, you're wearing some funky socks, you'll get called out, you'll get detention, and they'll give you a fresh new pair of socks.
That's your award, right?
That's our award.
There's a high expectation because these students, we're trying to teach our students that they're representing themselves when they go out to work. And part of what you do when you go to work and represent yourself is dress appropriately. And so that's what we try to reinforce. But we take them to and from work. It doesn't just happen, though. We don't just begin the school year. It starts in the summer. So, for instance, we and every other Cristo Rey school does a summer program. We did a 4-week summer program where we focused on work skills. Joe Mazza, our corporate work study director, right down here. Joe is in charge of putting the corporate work study program together, and he assembled the 4-week summer modules. So shaking hands, looking somebody in the eye. We talked about personal brand.
Some of the important small
Excel.
social skills that people take for granted, but
Yes. And then on the other side, the hard skills. Microsoft Office. That's a real need. We need to know who can type. We need to know who has foreign language skills. Because these are all valuable. I brought some interesting, one of the things as I thought about this and the group assembled here today, I thought it might be interesting to share kind of some of the feedback that the supervisors have been giving and then some of the student experiences, just so you could get an idea of because a common question is, when businesses consider this, is, well, what can students do? And in our case, they're only 14 years old. Eventually, they'll be 14 through 18 years old, and everyone will love the seniors. But we have freshmen this year, and so the question is, what can they do? A law firm in town said about our freshman Marco, she wrote this on at the end of every day, there's a feedback mechanism that's on email. She writes, "I've been thinking, I did not know what to expect having a high school student working for us. And while I've been indicating that he meets expectations because he does everything expected of him, really, he's exceeded my expectations pretty consistently. We can really trust he will follow instruction, ask questions when necessary, do it well, with a smile always. We feel really lucky to have Marco on our team. He took on some new tasks today, and I'm told he did quite well." So it's an illustration. Another one, we have students talk about what they do during the day. And Chris at US Bank wrote, that he went to a team meeting, he visited the TT and SSNet and USB.net, worked on Visio and Photo Org Chart, went to OGR to work on archive project introduction and audit, and worked on the SS report and then participated in a debrief. I don't know what that means. Does anybody know what that means?
It sounds like an impressive day.
Yeah. I mean, we get these, but then, there are other really great stories. That we have a student that's working on the trading floor of R.W. Baird this year as a freshman, and she's talking about revenues, and she's talking about companies that are buying and selling, and that. I was just talking to her in the parking lot the other day.
How many employers, for people in the room, how many Milwaukee area employers are participating now in this?
So currently we have 23 Milwaukee area businesses, and we'll have to grow that number. As we take on more students, we'll be looking for more jobs for students, more opportunities. As we only have freshmen this year, and I mentioned before, we'll be growing. We'll have freshmen through seniors. So as we add a class, we'll have to take on more jobs.
And when you speak to potential employers, what are the most common questions they ask you about this? Because this is new to them in many cases. What do they ask you?
What can these students do? That's one of the big ones. How do students work at 14 years old? Can you do that? And the answer is yes, and because of an agreement with the Federal Department of Labor, we can do that. They range, but I think they also want to know what kind of support's involved in the program. So Joe and his team are responsible for making sure this goes well, both for the student, that the student transitions into the job and can succeed at the job, but also that the supervisor at the job site feels supported, knows where to go with questions, feels like they can give feedback and evaluation on the student, and that'll be listened to.
So walk me through the student experience. You touched on this earlier, Maritza, but this is, to me, it strikes me as a lot of this is about maturity, it's about confidence. Describe the growing process for you as starting off as somebody who's 14 years old and you're going to work, but as you grow through the high school years, how did you change? What did you learn about yourself and what did you learn from others?
I think I was baptized by fire. And the reason why I say that is because when, I was working at Mother Baby, one of the physicians, OBGYN, asked me, "Are you interested in seeing this live birth next week when you come?" That sounds super cool. I was like, what do I have to do? Well, take this, of course, permission slip is what she called it at the time, and take this to your mom, and if they give you permission, then you can do it. So I did, super excited, right? And trying to explain to a very, very Catholic mother that I'm trying to watch someone else's birth was very interesting, very difficult, but eventually she came around, and so the next week I was super eager to, and ultimately it was a beautiful experience. I did not faint at the sight of blood, so I was like, damn, this is for me. I'm supposed to be a nurse. And so ever since then, they helped me build my own confidence and build my own motivation that if you want to become a nurse, these are the steps you have to take. This is, look into colleges, look into universities. This is what you have to look into when it comes to scholarships, when it comes to financial aid. And so as a 14-year-old, that's very difficult to embrace. And, you're just kind of like, yeah, okay, that's cool. And so my first years, I was at one hospital. The second 2 years, my last 2 years, junior and senior year, I was at Northwestern Hospital, downtown Chicago. And I was actually in the IT department. And believe it or not, I didn't know that hospitals had IT departments until that point in time, which was another learning experience for me. IT is everywhere. That's right about the time that they were opening the new Women's Prentice Hospital. And I was in that hospital with my other peer. There was 2 of us at that time, and we were running around, connecting all of the phones, connecting all of the PCs, making sure that every station, whether it's in the ICU or down to the cafeteria so everyone can pay for their food, had the tools that they needed, the technology that they needed to succeed and make this hospital work. And so that was a really neat experience for me to say that I was a part of that process when that Women's Prentice Hospital was going up. And, I did learn a lot. I developed, and I definitely learned when it came to applying for college what I wanted to do. So I actually majored in nursing and minored in IT because of my experience with Cristo Rey. And a lot of my recommendations came from my supervisors. Both my supervisors from my first job and my second job were at my high school graduation. They became a part of my family. On Saturdays, it was just one of those things where they would check up on me because they wanted to make sure that I was okay. My family was okay, and they loved learning about the cool things I did on the weekends. For example, we had this really cool bautizo, there was a mariachi, it's just the cultural things, and the cultural exchange that occurs, and it was amazing. So I learned that I needed to be more appreciative of the guidance and the help that as a 14-year-old you may not necessarily identify or appreciate, but as a 17, 18-year-old you definitely learn that these are valuable relationships that you're building. And essentially that's what networking is. They teach you about networking at the age of 14, but you don't really put that into play until you're living it in your everyday life. And as an undergrad at Marquette, now as a professional, networking is key, as we all know. And that's something that I was fortunate enough to learn at the age of 14. And so now my sister, I have 4 siblings that are all actually at Cristo Rey right now. Well, one graduated, he's a year younger, he went to NIU, and then my 2 sisters are currently in high school right now. One works for Loyola Medical College, and the other one works for Mesro Financial. And she's 14 now, she's just entered her sophomore year, she's getting big. And she loves it. She talks the same evaluation. She talks about me. She talks to me about her workday, and I don't understand what she's saying. And it's awesome, and it makes me feel so proud that she has the same opportunity that I had. And my mom and my dad are so gracious and so thankful for the opportunity that Cristo Rey was able to afford our family.
Let me ask you something about this. And it's kind of related, Andrew, because you hear this. You're a new school in town, and there are folks in town who say, this is kind of, you're getting the cream of the crop students. You're getting the highly motivated students and families. Right. And public schools don't have that same opportunity. All the kids are going to be there. What do you say to people who make that observation?
Well, I think if you're listening to Maritza talk about her experience coming to Cristo Rey, you may have cued in that she didn't talk about grades at all. She actually talked about the interview. Employability with us is the key. That's really what, when kids talk about coming to Cristo Rey, it's about, are you going to show up? Are you willing to work? Are you going to answer questions and talk to people? Those are the things that we look for in our students. So,
do you look at, we had a gentleman here a couple years ago, Paul Tuff, who wrote a pretty interesting book about the fact that it's curiosity and it's grit and it's your ability to bounce back from defeat or failure. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're looking for in your kids?
Yes, ultimately we're looking for, but we're also looking for that openness to grow in those things. Because not every student that we take, certainly most of them at 14 years old, don't have that. And we're looking to build that in them. And we leverage the work experience in addition to the experiences at school to do just that. That if you have a setback at work, okay, let's talk about it. How do we problem solve? How do we get over that? How do we get past that? But I think it's important that that people know there's a lot of work involved in helping students realize that this work world, they are deserving of this. And they need to know that they're capable, and we're going to put them there. And when you set the high bar, students are likely to meet it.
What are the big challenges you face right now? Because you're laying out a story of, there is some track record of success that you're talking about that you can sell, let's put it bluntly. But you still face challenges. What are the challenges?
Sure. Well, we're new. I think that's a big one. There are a lot of educational initiatives in Milwaukee, and to be able to stand out, to be able to tell our story to broad audiences. I mean, we have got, over the next 4 years, to expand our work program pretty quickly. We don't have an option. We're adding a sophomore class. Whether Joe likes it or not, we're adding a sophomore class. And we have to come up with work experiences for them.
You're going to be a school of about 400 at some point?
Yes,
Is that the plan?
about 400 to 500, somewhere in there. So,
Okay.
like all Cristo Rey schools.
So how many employers do you need?
Well, we'll need so it doesn't work out at quite times the number of students times 4. But if you want to do like rough math, that's what it is. So if we have 100 students per class, then we need 25 employers. So if we have 400 students, so yeah.
So in some respects, you're an ambassador for Cristo Rey. What do you tell kids who were your age, the 14-year-olds, the 13-year-olds who are still trying to figure things out as kids that age want to do?
It's interesting. I've actually been around at a few open houses at Notre Dame Middle School and a few other different middle schools talking to families and kids. And, you get your students, your 14-year-olds and the 8th graders that don't quite necessarily understand why they have to dress up or if they can still be a part of the extracurricular activities that their friend at another school may have. And it's really important for me, in a sense, it almost works out as an ambassador because I always want to make sure that the student knows that you have the same opportunities that any other student does. You can play soccer, you can play basketball, these sports are there for you. If you're interested, you can get involved in debate and student council, those programs are there. And, on top of that, you get to go to work every day. And that's a
Do they look at that as a positive, or does that sound like, man, I got to go to work, I'm going to school, what else do they want from me? I got to mop,
Right.
and I got to clean up things and dishes and all that stuff.
Exactly. No, you get students that are coming from both angles. You get the students that are like, oh, that's really cool. I want to work. I want to have, just be in a computer. And it's just the excitement of going downtown and having that job and being able to tell your friends and your family members that, yeah, I work. Oh, you work? I work too, And so the other aspect of it is it's difficult. When you do get the 14-year-olds that are not on board, they don't want to work more. They already do chores on the weekends. They're already doing homework. And I think it's very important to kind of show them the cool aspect to it, although I'm very much being told by my sisters that I'm past the point where I'm cool anymore, so that's great. But just really reaching down to what they're interested in. Like, well, what do you like to do? Oh, I'm the best one on the soccer team. Oh, that's really cool. If you go to Cristo Rey, you can be the best one at their soccer team. That doesn't have to change. That it's this weird image that Cristo Rey schools just work, but you do have the academics, you do have the extracurricular activities, and it's a holistic approach to an education the way I see it. And I very much enjoyed being able to express my gratitude and just my love and my passion for Cristo Rey.
Mike, we had a student, you talk about how students react to work. We had a student, Maria, and she is currently at Baker Tilly. And she got into the van at the end of the day, and it was pretty clear that Maria was feeling like low energy. She just wasn't, she was worn down or something. And the van driver said, Maria, are you okay? And she said, she took a big sigh, and she said, I'm so busy right now. I don't know what I'm going to do during tax season. So they internalize this, right? They feel some responsibility.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that. That's very funny. So what do you do? And let's talk about the realities of school. Some kids are better students than others. Some kids struggle. Some kids fail. Some
Right.
kids may want to drop out. What happens to those kids at Cristo Rey? Is failure an option?
No,
at Cristo Rey?
we fight to keep them. We fight for every student. We set up our program to provide academic supports because we know that a number of our students are going to need it coming in. And so, we have an academic support program. I think to Maritza's point, I've emphasized with our staff, we do need to provide a comprehensive education because that's a retention strategy. I mean, we need to offer sports. We need to offer clubs. We're going to have our homecoming dance next Friday night. I thought they'd forget about it. Turns out freshmen talk to other freshmen. They know they're supposed to have a homecoming dance. So they are. So we need to have these things in place so that we don't give students another reason to say, well, I'm just going to go to this other. I mean, they're working hard, and we know we're pushing a pretty high bar. But another thing to mention is that we're doing this standards-based grading. And in standards-based grading, you are teaching everything. You're not saying, here's the lesson, and half the students get it, half the students don't, and moving on. After assessment, for the students that don't get it, we're reteaching. The teachers are reteaching. So we're setting up to make sure that nobody's going to get lost and that everybody's going to feel supported, and we're going to fight like heck to keep them. Because if we accept a student, when I talk to our staff about how serious this work is, when we accept a student, that's our word. That we're going to do everything we can to make sure that student has what we promise in our mission when they graduate.
And even disciplinary problems.
Even disciplinary problems. We'll work through those. We'll work through those. Now, obviously, there are lines that have to be drawn if it's impacting the school as a whole. But these students, I mean, as big of responsibilities we get them, they are teenagers. And so we work with them, whether, no matter what the circumstances are, they are human beings. They're made in the image and likeness of God, and we're going to treat them like that.
Let me talk for a moment about who's teaching in the schools and who your principal is and the leadership, because that's obviously such an important part. I'm sure you can remember teachers you had in your experience who were game changers for you. Who are the teachers? Where are you finding people? Because it's competitive out there right now.
Yeah, it is competitive, and Milwaukee is. I would agree with that. A number of people have talked about teachers, how competitive it is. Actually, we have the benefit with our national network of having some of our teachers, not all, but some of them actually coming from outside the city including our principal. So our principal, Luke Harrison, it's probably, and yes, I am biased, but I think he's one of the best young principals in this city. He came from Amistad High School. Amistad, for those who haven't heard of Amistad before, is in New Haven, Connecticut. It's a high-performing charter school network. It's one of the best schools in the state of Connecticut, and he was a part of starting that high school. He drove change in a lot of ways to a school with a real urban focus, and so he's coming in, and Milwaukee is his home. We were fortunate to recruit him back to Milwaukee, and I think it was a real win. Father Bill Johnson, Father Bill right there. So Father Bill founded Nativity Jesuit Middle School, also helped out. Founded the Cristo Rey Twin Cities School. So, there's a good group of leadership here that is. Joe Mazza started businesses, has worked in sales, realized one day he wanted to work for a mission and came to work for Cristo Rey. And so I'm fortunate because I think we've got a lot of great people. Teachers as well. We some from here, some from backgrounds at public schools, some from backgrounds of Catholic schools. But one thing in common, that they all are squarely behind the mission.
Can you be competitive in terms of pay and in terms of benefits and the things that are important to any teacher?
We can be competitive. I mean, I would say we can't necessarily outdo the public school system, but we're competitive, and I think for our teachers, they are about the mission, and so as long as we can be in the ballpark, we don't have anybody walking away because they're not making enough money.
Let me come back to Maritza. So when people ask you about your experience and how it affected you as a person, how it impacted your life, what's your elevator speech? What do you tell them about Cristo Rey that made you the person you are and the person I think you still want to be?
Oh, absolutely. I think Cristo Rey holds it this mission and this way of living. Be men and women for others. It's something that's integrated in our minds when we're 14 and we're accepted into Cristo Rey. And so for me, it's very important to be a woman for others in every aspect of my life, but also to bring my family along with me during that process and during that ride. Because, I'm benefiting from this experience, absolutely, but I want my parents who never had the opportunity of an education, who came here from Mexico when I was born, to also be a part of the celebration and a part of my struggle and the efforts, because they've been there every step of the way. And so for me, it's very important to bring them along and, be with me when I learn about FAFSA and when I learn about scholarships and when I learn about college and now as a professional what that means, and make sure that they learn a little bit, because in some ways they feel like they are a part of Cristo Rey as well. Like they are living a life through me and through all of their children who are now at Cristo Rey. And so for me, it's impacted me in a way that it's very difficult to describe and to share. I hope that my passion reflects through what I'm saying right now to you all here, but it's by far the best experience of my life. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have been accepted to Marquette's undergrad nursing program. And I see Juanita here, Terry, who led one of the best Project Beyond programs that was also offered me a support, a home here at Marquette. But with that, without Cristo Rey, I really wouldn't have learned about FAFSA, wouldn't have learned about what the Gates Scholarship was all about, or what the Urban Scholarship here at Marquette was all about.
You were a Gates Scholar.
I was a Gates Scholar. Mm-hmm. And so I was very fortunate enough for that, and the Urban Scholarship here at Marquette, which is a full tuition scholarship for 4 years, and the Gates Scholarship covers 5 years of undergrad, including a study abroad experience. And so I went to Madrid, I went to Spain, I traveled through Europe, and I did some of the things that I would have never imagined as a 9-year-old playing, looking at my neighbor who was dressed up going to this school. And so my gratitude and my love really is deep into what the school's mission is, and what it strives to do, not only for the students, but for the parents, and even more broad than that, for the community. So
you were saying before we came in the room, we were talking a little bit about your future. You said, I know you're breaking your parents' hearts because you stayed in Milwaukee. They wanted you to come back to Chicago, but you're staying here. But you said you want to immerse yourself in the Latino community. Is that an extension, too, of the experience you had at Cristo Rey, that you want to do for others what was done for you?
Oh, absolutely. So I don't know that you all remember me mentioning that I graduated cum laude from the School of Nursing here at Marquette. And so I have my Bachelor of Science in Nursing, but upon graduation, I decided to put nursing aside for now and pursue a job opportunity at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Wisconsin. When I was an undergrad, I did 2 summers worth of research with the McNair program through EOP. And as a McNair scholar, they want to instill in you to pursue higher education, whether that's a master's degree and ideally a doctoral degree. And both my research, both summers, was focused on the Hispanic community and what does it take for, I noticed in my family, and this is actually how it came to be, that when my mom or my dad was sick, they would hesitate to go to the physician to get checked out. And so that's what my research was focused on. And, in conclusion, it was all focused about understanding the culture and building trust with the community. And so for me, it was very difficult to, I was planning on pursuing a master's of public health, but it was very difficult for me to do that without really immersing myself in the Hispanic community and knowing what it's like to fully be immersed and to be there every single day. Right now I work at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, 10th and National, the heart of the Hispanic community here in Milwaukee, and it's been by far the best experience. They live a mission to help out the people in the community, and I think vicariously living that mission as well and continuing my mission from Cristo Rey of trying to really just give my all to the community.
So 2 final questions for Andrew, and then we'll take questions from the audience. The first one is that, Cristo Rey does have a track record, as I think I said earlier, and it's been successful in a number of measurements that we often apply to schools. But this took a while to get Cristo Rey to Milwaukee. It was not exactly something that just happened like that. Is that pretty accurate?
I'm going to quote Dean Hank. I hope you don't mind, Dean Hank.
And we should say that he was also instrumental.
He was instrumental.
In Cristo Rey.
Dean Hank often told me in the 20-month feasibility study that we conducted that there's no such thing as a no-brainer in Milwaukee. And you know what? He's right. Dean Hank was the one who saw, he knew the community, he knew the educational needs, he brought the opportunity. Really, this concept, this notion that Marquette University could sponsor the feasibility study was new for Cristo Rey. Never had an institution of higher learning sponsored a feasibility study, but Dean Hank felt like it had the best shot if Marquette University's College of Education stepped up, and credit really for Dean Hank at the College of Education for making this feasibility study work. It was a 20-month study. And felt like I was all around the city talking to a whole lot of people. We're talking to the community about the need and the interest. I mean, that includes educational leaders, prospective students, talking to the business community, asking the business community, if this happens, are you going to provide a job? Are you going to support it? Talking to the donor community, looking for a site for a school. I wanted to have a really good site that I felt positive about in opening. And then every school is a Catholic school, but not every school is run by the Jesuits. And so deciding and talking with a number of the religious communities in town, who could take this school on, who wants this school. And so those were the things that I focused on. And you know, Cristo Rey feasibility studies are among the most intense that you will ever find in terms of school replication. And it's because the stakes are high. We want to get it right.
30 schools, generally one per city. Is there any chance that sort of model could change where you could have 2 schools in Milwaukee? You could have one on the south side, you could have one on the north side.
So in some cities, we're doing that right now. And we're testing it in some of the bigger cities just to see how that would work. So we've got 2 schools actually in Chicago now. We've got 2 schools in New York, one in Harlem, one in Brooklyn. And there are others on the docket to come. So I never say never, but not in the foreseeable future. We want to make this school work. We want to get it right with this one.
All right, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. If you're in the seating bowl, press down on the rim, not on the ball, but keep your finger down on the rim. We'll be able to hear your questions. If you're not in the seating bowl and you have a question, you want to look for the gentleman in the red shirt, Ryan, with the microphone, and so then we can all hear your questions. So just raise your hand and we'll take some questions. Right here. You bet.
Andy, we've got a 300% increase in employers are needed in the next 3 years. So how do we, as employers, either through Catholic guilt or Jesuit mind tricks, how do we get our competitors, other businesses, to get involved so it's not just all on you and Joe?
It's all on Joe. Well, it's going to take a community to really spread the word and let people know about what we're doing. You know, the business community, I think you hit a great point. The business community knows it's coming. They know that they're going to need the entirety of the population in this city if they're going to continue the vibrant quality of life that we currently enjoy and want to continue. And so I think that reality, when they start looking at their own business model and their own employee, where their own pipeline of employees are coming from, in addition to their interest, their ever-increasing interest in diverse, educated young people, is going to drive a lot of them to look at this opportunity. And so my hope is that as our students do well by these companies, as they demonstrate that they can do it, and businesses understand what they want, they get a better understanding of what they want, and decide that they want to take a hand in the formation of their future employees. This will continue to spread.
And quickly on that, to that point, what would you tell a skeptical employer who's saying, really, I'm going to put a 14-year-old to work? What could a 14-year-old, who's worried about a lot of things other than a job, what am I going to get from that? What would you say to that employer?
You know, to that employer, I say, think again, because it's very important. You know, we talk about filling the work gap, right, in the state of Wisconsin, and especially within the next 8 years, as Governor Walker has announced. But, you know, I think the most important opportunity, and it's the most magical opportunity, depending on how you look at it, is to start being a part of that process in that individual's life at the age of 14. And if you see 4 individuals at that job, for example, and you see them and you talk to them and you encourage them, by the time that they're 18, by the time that they're 24, by the time that they're 34, and they're really filling these jobs throughout the state of Wisconsin, they're going to be the individuals and they're going to have your print on them. They're going to have your encouragement, your love and your support, and also you sharing your talents with them so that once, you know, they are at the point where they can develop as professionals, they're strong professionals. They're just not any professionals. We talk about, you know, being a part of the shaping process. Well, this is the most unique opportunity you have to be a part of that process at the very beginning.
Let's take some more questions. Let me go right back here. There you go.
Are you currently partnering with local governments, City of Milwaukee, City of West Dallas? And if not, are you open to that?
Sure, and actually, so we are technically in West Milwaukee. so right over Miller Parkway.
Just south of Miller Park.
Just south of Miller Park. So we've been in touch with West Milwaukee. We're trying to get involved in the chamber there. We're trying to get further involved in the activities of the community. The church that we are at, St. Florian's Church, happens to be very community-centered and focused. They do fish fries. I'm going to plug the fish fries. They better... I want them to hear this. They do fish fries. They do all sorts of community events that really pull the broader community in. And so, yes, we are looking at ways of working with the community, and we're open to that.
Other questions?
How do you reach the huge population of at-risk kids who don't have the kind of impressive family support that you've been talking about? How do you reach that population that doesn't have a family to support them and encourage them and back them up? It's a huge issue that we face here.
Mm-hmm. Any way we can. I know, and it doesn't exactly answer your question, but I will go to supermarkets. I will go to schools anywhere in the city. I will go to nonprofit, and I'm willing to, if there are any folks in the audience, I'm willing to go to nonprofit organizations that serve particularly low-income youth. We go any churches, anywhere we can possibly reach students and parents with the message. It's difficult, but there are folks in the community who typically have stepped up to help, so we've been fortunate.
And a little to Andy's point, so, there was point in times where my family wasn't my strongest support system. It was people like Andy, the president at Cristo Rey in Chicago spoke to my parents multiple times because they were frustrated at the fact that, I was going to dances, because in Mexico, dances mean a whole different thing than here, or because I wanted to go to Kairos, a retreat that you may all recognize, and how was I going to a co-ed sleepover? That was just absolutely out of this world with my parents. So, you had teachers and you had these key individuals at Cristo Rey who really believed in the students and were able and willing to, take time either in the morning before school or after school to talk to my parents and really explain to them the importance of why they should let me go to Kairos, or what this means for college, or what this means for this and that. And they really played a part. And it's not just showing up for school, it's going above and beyond. And I'm sure as Andy has witnessed himself, and Joe and others here, and Bill Johnson, it's really taking the time to make sure that you're bringing the parents along the way, because if you don't have the parents' permission and the parents' blessing, nothing gets done. So yes, I had my parents' support, but really that had a lot of poking from the back for the staff at Cristo Rey and Pilsen.
Mm-hmm. Mike, can I just add one more
please.
thing? For the woman in the back about the governmental partnerships, our students also work at governmental entities, just so you know. So we love those partnerships.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Can anyone go to, I'm very impressed with your talk, but can anyone go to this school?
Our focus is on low-income students, but in terms of faith, we accept students of all faiths or no faiths at all. In Milwaukee, where we have students from around the metro. We actually have a student that takes 2 buses from the north side in the morning in order to get to us. We have 2 students that I know of that have actually moved closer to our school in order for one of them to walk and the other one to have a short ride. And so it's
So what is the cutoff monetarily for
income?
income for people to go there?
right. So I mean, if you know the choice program. Generally, we look at that, and but we have 90% of our students are free and reduced lunch. So if that gives you a sense of who we're looking for, that right there is who we're looking for.
Yes.
Good afternoon. My name is Charlene Moore, and I run a youth leadership organization called Urban Underground. And one of the things that, first of all, I would like to commend you on the awesome work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And your staff with Cristo Rey. One of the things that I've realized with some of our students is not just getting to college, but staying in college. Right. What have you all done to help them plan financially, think about, what it entails to complete school? Mm-hmm. And then the second part to that question is, what is the percentage of your young people that complete college, seeing that the goal is for 100% of them to attend.
To attend,
Question.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what do we do to support students in in their understanding of college? I mean, we start freshman year. We start looking at college-going skills, what they need, and we have people on staff it's their job to make sure that our students start learning some of the basics that they'll need in order to go to college. They need, some of our students note-taking skills. I mean, that's how basic we start. But as we work further into the high school process, things that you might have tried or you probably do, the prep, the test prep, and the FAFSA, and working with the parents, communicating as best we can or guardians, whomever that person is in that child's life that has some influence, communicating with them about the importance. But I think the real difference maker here isn't just what we do in the high school. It's the job, because, and I was going to say this a little earlier, so I'm glad you brought this up. College isn't the end for our students. The job is the end. The job makes college a means. And so when you're coming from a family where no one's been to college, and you're hearing your school say, go to college, it's important, go to college, you'll benefit, go to college, it's good for you. That doesn't ring very true. But when you're going to a law firm or a hospital or a business down the street, and you say, I can do this job, I want to do this job, I'm going to do this job, then we can have a real serious conversation like Maritza realized with you about, okay, well, what are the steps? What are the steps? Where do you need to go? What do you need to do? Who do you need to meet? And it becomes very concrete for students. It's not just go to college because it's good for you. It's go to college because it's a mechanism to get you to where you want to go. So I think that I can't underestimate the impact of the work program in this process either.
Let me follow up on that. Do you have numbers in terms of students who begin college and then finish college? How does Cristo Rey stack up? Because that's an issue if you talk to any university in this city.
Right.
Trying to keep kids so that they get their degree, trying to keep them in school. Do you know how the Cristo Rey kids do as opposed to just the general population? More than double.
Actually almost triple the rate of the low-income minority young people that, if you were to compare it across the country. Almost triple. And I think it will continue to grow because...
That's something you're working on?
Oh yeah, we'll continue to work on it because our goal, our aspirational goal for our network is that our college persistence and graduation rate equals the rate of upper income students. So when we compare our college graduation rate, we're not just going to settle for the national average. What we look at is what students with means can achieve, and we're driving towards that.
Okay. And just to mention, for my experience, for example, in Chicago, it's a little older than the one in Milwaukee, for example, where that only has the freshman class. We have an alumni outreach coordinator that reaches out to us via Facebook, via all methods of social media, email, open houses, and make sure that we know, especially the students, that are out there that either are currently in college or have graduated and need tools or resources, thinking about going back for higher education. Are you stuck without any financial means? Do you have a difficult time passing a course? Whatever the situation is, she'll cue questions like those, and then it'll get students thinking, well, actually, yeah, I'm struggling in this class. Can you help me? And it becomes a conversation, and it becomes an opportunity to engage the alumni or engage the current undergrad students to make sure that they stay in college and that they do graduate.
So, and to piggyback off that, we have about 25 Cristo Rey alumni here at Marquette University now. And we had 3 in over the summer to talk to our students, and not including Maritza. And that is not an accident. Once we have graduates in Milwaukee, that's transformational to the students and their parents' attitudes towards the possibility of them being in this position.
Let me take another question. Sharon. On the rim, yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone who wants to go to Cristo Rey get accepted into Cristo Rey?
So what we look for is employability. So if, for instance, if they have missed school 50 times or 100 times their 8th grade year, our concern is they may not show up for work. And if they can't show up for work, that's really problematic for us. And so when we look at employability, we look at those things. Can you in an interview, I mean, granted, the first question is, name 3 characteristics your friends say when we sit down with a student would say about you. So they're not really difficult questions, but what we're looking for is, can a student engage an adult? Even if they say a few words, is it appropriate? Do they respond? We're looking for just a little bit of a spark and an interest in this work program. Because if they come and they say, I don't know why I'm here, my parent made me come, I don't want to be at this school. Well, there are other options out there, so we're not going to force anything. And so that would be another case where we would say,
like a certain set of requirements for grades or anything like that, or no? You judge a lot of it on the interview.
We do, because employability is key. It is absolutely key, and I have seen kids who come in very low on the grades side of it and just flourish in the job. And it is amazing, because it is just the motivation they need to hold on to them throughout their 4 years there. These students otherwise might be a risk of dropping out, and that work component, being good, having someone at work, a supervisor, say great things about them, that's just enough to hold on to them, and that goes back to your retention point. We are going to do everything we can to hold on to them.
Let me take maybe one final question here. Yes, sir.
One word is impressive. My question is, you are a great model for MPS. And I'm wondering, do you interface with the MPS people, the city school board, as to why you're having successes? And do you actually have the time to help MPS?
And actually, I think MPS, in all fairness, MPS would probably say, there are the Carmen schools, and they're trying to do some of the same workforce things. So just to, to toss that out.
Right. So I would say, because we're in West Milwaukee, we've interfaced more with the West Dallas, West Milwaukee School District, and I've visited several of the public schools there. And the leadership there, and we've talked about collaborating. We've talked about having our teachers go to their schools, their teachers coming to our schools and learning. I mean, there's a real openness to that.
I'm going to wrap things up there. Before we go, I just want to mention a couple of events that are coming up on our schedule. We've got a whole bunch of them. We urge you to go to our website, law.marquette.edu. Click on the issues, and you'll see that we're going to be hearing from Lieutenant Governor Clayfish. We'll be hearing from the Bucks' new president, Peter Fagan, and former Congressman Obi and Petri later in the month. We also have a conference that you're invited to coming up later in the month of October. It's about the future of the American Public Library. It's actually going to be really great, and so I would I sound like someone, don't I? It's going to be great, take my word for it. It's going to be huge, that's what I should say. But anyhow, it is actually going to be a great morning, and you're all invited. So having said that, I want to thank everybody for their interest and attention as always. We hope to see you next time, and please give another round of applause to Maritza and Andrew. Thank you. Thank you.